I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess, and today I am doing number 5 of my underrated Victorian recommendations series. So in this series, I pick 3 Victorian books that I feel are underrated, and I talk about them and why you should read them. This is actually round 2 of filming this video because I had filmed a whole one like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then, well, I had it all uploaded and everything. It was all edited. And then I looked back at part 4 of this series. Part 4? Yes, part 4. And saw that I had recommended the same book in both of them. It was The Clever Woman of the Family by Charlotte Mary Young. So apparently I really think you should read The Clever Woman of the Family. But obviously that did not need to be talked about twice in a row. So here I am filming this again. Let's jump right in. First up, we have one that I just recently finished. This is Thelma by Marie Corelli. And this came out in the 1880s, and it follows this woman Thelma, who is a young Norwegian woman, and she meets Sir Philip Errington, who is a upper-class British man who is in Norway on his yacht with his friends, and he sees her and immediately falls in love, and then works his way to get close to her father so that he can get close with her. And then they get married, and Thelma has to leave Norway and come to London, and upper-class London is not very nice. And so the second half of this really deals with her trying to navigate this and the strain that it puts on the relationship between her and Philip. I had so much fun with this. It's just, it's melodramatic. It's very romantic, capital R, especially the parts in Norway. Almost folktale-ish. Like, there's a dwarf named Sigurd who is like always spouting off kind of prophecies, and it feels very big and grand, and then we come down to London and it's very realistic, which is such an interesting change, and really showing a change that literature went through from the early 19th century to the later 19th century. So we start with romanticism, and then we go to realism in the later half of the century. But anyway, I just had so much fun with this. I loved the characters. Thelma is a little bit too perfect, I will say, but I felt for her. I really did. And I enjoyed seeing her story. Just don't get this edition. God, this edition's from Amazon. It's one of those like print to order. It's terrible. Next up is another book from the 1880s. This is A Struggle for Fame by Charlotte Rydell. It was recently reprinted by Tramp Press in 2014, as you can probably tell by this very pink cover. Isn't it great? So Charlotte Rydell was a very popular novelist at that point in the 19th century, and she very much draws on her life story for this. This follows Glen Wesley, who is a young woman immigrating from Ireland to London, and she wants to become a writer. And Charlotte Rydell immigrated from Ireland to London and became a writer. So this is the story of Glen navigating the publishing world, as well as navigating this whole new area that is very different from what she's used to, and that is set up to be prejudiced against her. This deals a lot with how Irish people were viewed, and how some of them would mask their accents so they would blend in more. And it was just super fascinating to see that. And it also deals with, of course, gender in publishing, because to contrast Glen Wesley's story, we have Bernard Kelly, another Irish immigrant, who is also trying to become a writer. And to see how he's treated versus how Glen is treated based on their gender. This is just super fascinating from the lens of like being interested in Victorian publishing, because it gives you like a breakdown of how this worked. We have the readers reading the stuff and then the actual publisher. And it's just super fascinating to see the process. I'm really glad this got republished. I would highly recommend it if any of that sounds interesting to you. And also, I just love this cover. It's so pink. And then last up, we have one from the 1890s. This is Marcella by Mrs. Humphrey Ward, also known as Mary Augusta Ward. This is a strange little book. I say little, it's giant. This follows Marcella Boyce. She's from a upper class family, but they don't have a lot of money. And she has been getting educated in London, and she has fallen in with a group of socialists and has taken on those views herself. And then she moves back to her family home, where she's of the landowning class. And there is a guy whose name is Aldous Raeburn, who's the Tory candidate, who falls in love with her, and they get engaged, but their political views don't really align. She's far more radical than he is, and this causes some problems. And I won't say more other than that for summary because it would give it away. But there's a lot of different stuff that goes on in here. Like, there's murder, there's illness, there's politics, there's so much. What's really interesting about this is that it's showing a woman being involved in politics. Is she necessarily super successful? Not really, but it is really interesting to see. So something to know about Mary Augusta Ward is that she is considered an anti-feminist writer. She was very against women's suffrage, and you can kind of see that in here. But at the same time, even though Marcella frequently gets proven wrong in her political views, she never stops engaging in politics. Even at the end of the novel, she's still engaging. And there is actually a sequel that I want to read, and she's continuing to engage. So that's a really interesting thing to explore, because we generally don't think of Victorian women being engaged in politics. And yet here is this author showing it. And we also have another anti-feminist writer, Margaret Oliphant, who shows a woman being engaged in politics, and Miss Marjoribanks. So super interesting, possibly something I'm going to explore in my dissertation. We will see. This is very long, and it does feel very long sometimes, but it is very fascinating. So if you can make it through the slow parts, I do think this is worth the read. All right, and those are my underrated Victorian recommendations for the day. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you heard or read any of these? If so, what did you think? What are some underrated Victorian recommendations that you have? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.